What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Factory Tour. I'm your host, Paul Patterson. I'm joined today by my friend Wyatt. He's one of the head honchos over at JWB Fantasy Football. You can find him on Twitter at WyattB_FF. And we're here to break down everything week 2. The NFL roller coaster continues, and we are along for the ride. So, Wyatt, how you doing today?
Still a little bit hungover from the Browns loss last night, staying up till midnight to watch them lose in incredible fashion like that. Always hurts. I'm wearing my brown shirt that says "We almost always almost win," which feels like a perfect encapsulation of last night's game.
Yeah, that game was, I mean, brutal for so many reasons. Obviously, losing hurts, but also losing Nick Chubb. I did
Yeah,
not watch the video of the injury, but I've heard horror stories about it.
yeah,
I don't
it's
do well
tough.
with that kind of stuff, so I will not be seeking it out. I've almost seen
Yeah,
it across my timeline a couple of times, and I'm like, nope, no, thank you.
yeah.
So it's really unfortunate for Nick Chubb, and we'll just start with him because it's right here at the top of the sheet anyway. Obviously, it's terrible news for him as a player. He's been a great running back for years. It's terrible for the Browns. I mean, one of the the highlights of that team, really, a team that really needs some highlights. And obviously done for the season. We'll see if he's able to make his way back, but not looking good for Chubb. Not great for dynasty managers that had him. Not great for redraft managers that had him. It creates a whole mess, and obviously the main domino to fall is Jerome Ford, who took over for Chubb after that injury. He played pretty well. I mean, he was involved in the passing game. He was efficient as a rusher. He scored a touchdown. Um, he looks to step in as the main guy. And since you're the Browns fan, why don't you just let us know what do you think of Jerome Ford and what should we expect?
I kind of like Jerome Ford coming out as a prospect enough, just because he has like NFL size, speed, athleticism, all those things that you like baseline you're looking for in a running back, right? Um,
Mhm.
I think he's like a good downhill runner. I don't think he's very shifty, but fairly powerful when he's running, good in a straight line because of the speed and size that he has. But when he got drafted late, in the NFL draft when he came out, it was kind of like, okay, like, well, that sucks. Like he's got the prototypical stuff, but he doesn't get the draft capital. Like we have to wait for a while. But we didn't get to see much of him as a rookie. I think believe it was like 8 carries in the regular season. But it was a good sign when the Browns basically just let Kareem Hunt walk. I mean, he Kareem Hunt didn't look particularly good his last
No.
year in Cleveland, so that was understandable, anyways. But it's also a sign of confidence in Jerome Ford when they let that happen because like it was Kareem Hunt and then unknown after Nick Chubb, and that's not a good place to be as an NFL backfield unless you have a lot of confidence in that unknown, which they apparently did,
Mhm.
and he did get to show that in his time last night. The impressive run he had where everything kind of got balled up on a stretch run out to the right, and he kind of found an extra lane up and brought it back to the left all the way around, almost scored on that play. He did some impressive things, as you mentioned. He was involved in the passing game, which is always great. We kind of like really want that, obviously, for running
Yeah.
backs. So for a backup running back to come in and like get all those touches was
Mhm.
really good. I'll note like you'll like Pierre Strong got a touchdown. He got 2 goal line carries, but that was directly after that long touchdown run where he got stopped just short of the goal line, and then
Ah,
Jerome Ford came out. So like I think that's a mirage. I think that Pierre Strong is purely like now the handcuff to Jerome Ford. I don't think Pierre Strong's going to mix in all that much. Um, Jerome Ford is that dude for the Browns offense. It looks like they're talking to Kareem Hunt. It sounds like they're bringing him in a visit, but like it just doesn't bother me very much with Kareem Hunt. You can argue that they just let him go because with Nick Chubb financially, like they just didn't want to wrap up the money in Kareem Hunt,
yeah.
and now they're bringing him back now that they kind of have to, and maybe he'll still have a big role, but. I staunchly believe that Kareem Hunt is basically done. I thought he looked really bad last year. It surprised me if he's better than Jerome Ford at this point.
Yeah, I don't think he is better than Jerome Ford at this point. I mean, I don't really get a lot of the discourse on Twitter that's like, oh, well, surely the Browns are going to bring in another running back or they're going to bring in Leonard Fournette or Kareem Hunt or whoever. It's like none of these names are players that are better than Jerome Ford. Like they have more name recognition, but they're not good football players anymore. And I don't think Ford is necessarily a special running back. I think once he went on day 3, that was kind of established, but I think he's kind of just Samaje Perine esque in that he can do everything that you want him
Yeah.
to do, and he's not going to ruin your offense, and he'll just sort of get what he can get. Occasionally, maybe he will make a play, but that's really all they need. I get signing a veteran for like locker room purposes or for whatever backup, emergency purposes, but I don't really think there's a threat that anybody's going to come in and supplant Ford as the main guy in the backfield. So I'm pretty bullish on him rest of season. I had a good amount of him in Dynasty actually. I have him in 5 of my leagues, and that can be a big boost, for a team, which is why you want to stash these backup running backs. This is a guy that I can pretty much flex every week moving forward, or at least I believe so. And you just sort of get that running back out of nothing. We obviously don't root for injuries, but that's why we make these contingency plans. And it
Yeah,
might actually, in some spots, kind of save some teams that were off to a slow start, maybe missing some guys. I was expecting to be able to play someone else that's gotten off to a bad start. Now I can slide Jerome Ford in there. So I think he's going to be fine. Probably not a league winner, but certainly a viable option for you. And anybody else that they bring in is probably just a backup option. Pierre Strong is definitely worth rostering in Dynasty if he's on
for
your
sure.
waiver wire. There's a couple leagues I checked where he was on the waivers. I put in a claim for him. This
Yeah,
show's
same. I
going to
found a
drop
couple
after.
spots. I think a couple of those spots were spots where I dropped him previously because I have a
Yeah.
lot of beer strong.
Yeah. He's one of those bubble guys, but anybody that's, a number 2 running back on an NFL roster needs to be on a dynasty team. This
Yeah,
show is going to drop after waivers run. So this is certainly not your waiver wire column, but hopefully you were able to get him if he was on waivers. He's worth picking up. He's now the handcuff to Ford if God forbid something happens to him too. And he's looked like a pretty solid player at times as well.
hmm
Um, yeah. So would you be trading? Would you be willing to go out and trade something of consequence for Jerome Ford on a team where you feel like you need running back help? Like, if you have a pretty strong team, but maybe you're weak at running back, throwing out a presumably late second round pick, do you think that that's reasonable, or is that jumping the shark a little bit?
um, it's tough. Like I think it's a reasonable price, but it's not a move that like I'm dying to make if I'm a competing team looking for a running back. Because if I think if I'm in that spot, um, maybe I'm not as equipped to compete as I think I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like it feels like an price. Excuse me. Maybe if you like really feel like the Browns are not adding like it is Jerome Ford rest of season, you can feel really confident about that, and you're really confident in his points per game. Like I can understand buying into that. It's just tough. Like it's just not the kind of move that I want to make. If I'm in that position, I'm feeling worse off. I guess like the one spot where maybe it's a little bit different is like maybe I have Jonathan Taylor
Yeah.
and I want to keep the production going until that fill-in comes back. And now Jerome Ford is just another possible weekly option for me, but I'm not relying on him. That's where I could see it.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I do kind of lean away from it because number one, like you said, if you're in that position, you might not have as strong of a roster as you think. And number two, it's just a lot to give up where I don't necessarily believe there's anything long term. Like I think there are a lot of people that are kind of optimists about running backs in these spots, like, oh, he's going to play really well, and then he's going to have a larger role, or the team's just going to make him the starter next year. And I don't really buy into that. I think most of the time with these situations, the day 3 running back gets thrust in. This is how you pay off that price in rookie drafts is right now. But holding on and thinking that you're going to get something more in the future, I think is a losing game more often than not. And so for me, if I don't already have the running back that falls into this spot, I'm probably just trying to find the next one.
Yeah.
I probably just want to get that, that found money next time as opposed to chasing after it. So I probably wouldn't be trading anything significant. I would definitely trade a couple thirds. I would trade like a bench wide receiver, somebody that's less likely to crack my lineup, but maybe still carries a little bit of intrigue. Trying to think of an example offhand. Like would you trade Tank Dell right now for Jerome Ford? Tank Dell, he
That's
seems a little exciting. Like maybe he's good,
yeah,
but
it's a little bit tough just because like Tank Dell's impressing so far. I would say I would rather bet on the running back than the small wide receiver.
yeah, that's
It's
where I'm
close
saying
though,
it's like
honestly.
kind of a breaking point, right? It's like I do like the idea of the wide receiver. Like he seems to be flashing some talent, but it's like the level he'd have to get to really be a guy you want to play, versus a
Yeah.
running back who's going to get volume. So I think that's kind of the line somewhere around there. And I think in most cases, the manager with Ford's probably just going to hold him for that. So um, you're not going to be able to pry him away from a lot of people. But the lesson from here, as always, is just prepare for the next eventuality. Make sure you have those running backs, especially the ones with an all-purpose skill set,
Hmm.
stashed on the bench while they are cheap. Um, some other running backs get thrust into these spots. Like I don't think we're going to see Matt Breida lighting things up while Saquon
No,
Barkley's out. I wouldn't be chasing him. But then again, I didn't think Kyron Williams was going to be the RB4
it's a
in
good
points
point.
per game after 2 weeks. So,
It's a good point.
what do we really know actually? Kyron Williams is the next guy I wanted to talk about today, and him and Cam Akers really just this
Yeah.
strange journey that we've been on. It feels like we're watching a rerun of seasons past. Cam Akers comes out, he's supposed to be the guy. Now he's not getting any touches. Then he's an inactive. I mean, I have just never seen this type of flip-flopping from a coach and a running back, like a player on the same team. He hasn't been gone to another team or a new coaching staff and had his role changed. Like his role has gone the full range under the same coach, where he's been a workhorse,
Hmm.
he's been a complimentary piece, he's been inactive. I don't know what the deal is here, but I mean, do we just assume the Cam Akers thing is over at this point?
I have to. Has anyone had as much of a roller coaster to start their career as Cam Akers? It's the wildest thing. I have to take like a big L on Cam Akers for the year because like I was way in on him on best ball. I thought I had a really good price, and like I just thought like the end of the season last year, like they figured out whatever it was. He looked really good at the end of the year, full workhorse role. Kyron Williams was on the roster, during that time. So I was like buying into it, and I thought he had an appropriate price. I didn't buy very much into Dynasty. Wasn't really feeling that necessarily. This was just kind of like a 1 year play to me,
Right.
and I didn't really want to spend the capital it would take to acquire him in Dynasty, so I wasn't buying there.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like I guess like you can look back now, and I think like the tea leaves were actually there. Week 1 last year, Adam Schefter's talking about how they've been talking up Kyron Williams, and he drafted him so high in his draft because of how strongly he felt about him, and then he gets injured on the opening kickoff, and we never really hear from him again. And then
Right.
this offseason, they're holding him out with the starters, which is clear sign by the Rams. They do this with all their starters. It's how we knew like who the starting wide receivers were going to be for week 1.
Yeah.
And then the reports start coming out really close to the season that like he's going to be a big part of the offense. To me, that meant, oh, okay, Cam Akers is going to have the third down role. Like that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that's what it was. It was like he's the change of pace third down running
Yeah,
back. And I thought, okay, that'll probably hurt Cam Akers' fantasy value, but he's still the starter. I did not foresee any world where Kyron Williams was just the starter
the
workhorse
dude,
running
the
back.
bell
Yeah.
cow.
And I don't even know if there's a lesson here or not. Like I don't want to over analyze the situation. Like it might just be Sean McVay's a weird coach and he does weird things. I don't know, because with Cam Akers, like last year, like you said, he was strong down the stretch. He played really well. Maybe it's just a mistake in assuming that was the signal and not anything from earlier in the season, and just assuming that this was like a linear progression. But it also made sense because of the injury recovery, where we thought, okay, he's getting healthy, he's playing better.
Yeah, it was kind of
Apparently
a
not.
mirage. Like I think the lesson of anything was that the end of last year, like the Rams had nothing to play for,
Yeah.
so maybe it did just make sense that Sean McVay was like, yeah, we'll just have Cam Akers go out there and get 20 carries because none of this matters.
Right. That's probably true. I guess it's like look at the longer sample of Cam Akers not necessarily being
Yeah,
very good, and maybe use that to make our decisions. But I didn't think Kyron Williams had the type of profile either
right.
where he could actually take on this kind of work. I mean, it's fairly unprecedented for a guy of his size and athleticism to handle this much of a workload. It's not like he's not even really playing that well. Like, I don't think he's even being that efficient of a rusher. He's not making big plays. He's just not messing up, and he's good
Yep.
at pass blocking from what I know. And again, it's another guy who's just competent in all phases, but not necessarily going to blow you away. Honestly, Kyron Williams feels like he should be 28 years old. Like I tweeted that
I
earlier
get
today
that.
because
Yeah.
it just kind of struck me. I was like, this guy's in his second season. He feels like one of those veterans who's just like bounced
Yeah.
around the league and now he's starting.
Yeah.
And it's annoying because we want the young, exciting player, but like he is the young, exciting player. He just doesn't, he just feels boring, but maybe he's not. Maybe we should be buying into this.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's in a similar place to Jerome Ford. I guess the Rams could be another team that like Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt their name might come up for them. It wouldn't surprise me if it happened. It would not surprise me if it doesn't happen. I think like this offseason, the Rams are just kind of put it in a tough position where they don't have draft capital to really do anything. They traded back like over and over and over again. The NFL draft got a bunch of day 3 picks. Drafted Zach Evans. They probably looked at Zach Evans like, well, this was like a really highly recruited player, and so like maybe there's some untapped potential that we can get out of him, but I'm guessing that's not happening.
Apparently he can't play. He can't play.
Probably the same thing that continues to happen to Zach Evans is happening to Zach Evans. Just now it's on an NFL roster. Keeps on. He's got something going on, Zach Evans, because he's got like the potential, right? But everywhere he goes, he ends up like getting outplayed by somebody. It just keeps happening.
Yeah. He's just like Cam Akers. They're two peas in a pod. Would you rather have Kyren or Jerome Ford on your dynasty team?
I'm going to go with Jerome Ford because I trust that rushing offense over the period of time more, and because I think the offense for the Rams could look a little bit different once Cooper Kupp comes back. I'm not sure if Kyren Williams will continue to see the amount of opportunities that he is seeing at that point. I think the Browns don't have much of a choice but to rely on Jerome Ford as long as they're starting running back. It's close though.
It sounds like a lot of Browns homerism to me. No, I'm just kidding. I think I agree with that. I mean, who's to say that Sean McVay isn't going to decide tomorrow that he doesn't like Kyren Williams and then change up the rotation again? I mean, he's a little bit hard to trust. I feel like it's more cut and dry in Cleveland, but I'd be fine either way. I actually think Jerome Ford's also probably better. I think I kind of tend to think he's the better player. Yeah, the ceiling's higher. I mean, yeah, that's definitely part of it. I mean, Kyren Williams is the RB4 in points per game, but he scored 2 touchdowns in each game.
Yeah,
that's not going to continue. And like you said, Cooper Kupp should be back, and that's going to change the distribution of touches in the offense. I mean, he's a black hole. He's just going to take it. He's going to take in everything that he can. And then you have Puka Nacua, who we might as well talk about here now. Who's also apparently a black hole. He has 9 more targets than any other player in the NFL. He's the wide receiver 2 in points per game. So, they've got those 2 guys to feed. We might see a little bit less work for Kyren. He also didn't he have like 8 targets this week, which is super 10. That's super.
That's the thing too. The Rams have run like 70 plus plays two weeks in a row. Like you can't count on that.
And they don't even throw to running backs. They're like usually near the bottom of the NFL. So I don't think that's going to be sticky either. I think that you're typically not going to see a lot of targets for Kyren. They usually use their running backs for pass blocking, and they don't draw up a lot of pass plays to running backs. So I think what we've seen so far is a mirage. He's still going to be startable, but I don't think he's going to be like a super exciting player. He's probably more like a low end RB2, as long as he holds on to that job. But Puka Nacua is exciting. He is incredibly exciting. I totally missed on him. I literally did not get him in a single dynasty rookie draft. I didn't even like, my eyes just passed over his name on the draft board. I have such a just a radar for like running backs and tight ends. Like that's all I'm at in round 3 and 4. And it's clearly a blind spot because I missed on this guy. I mean, this is like, nobody expected this, but it's like, he's incredible. I mean, if we redrafted the rookie draft right now, how high would he go? I mean, he'd go like 105, 106. Like
the conversation,
what is happening?
It's wild. The conversation of him and all the round 1 wide receivers is a real conversation, and then you have to start talking about him and JSN just because like Puka's actually producing right now. I'm not saying that I would do that. I'm just saying like that conversation would happen if you did the redraft.
I think the people need us to decide how high is too high for Puka Nacua, because this guy is breaking people's brains. Like I think he's breaking my brain. I don't know how to think rationally about a player when the sample is 2 games and he has 34 targets. I don't know. I just don't know if any rational discourse can take place, but we can try. I traded for him in 2 spots. I was able to trade a projected late second for him before the week 2 games kicked off, like Sunday morning.
That
So
looks
that
great
was
now.
thrilling. And then after the games, I fired off an offer. I thought I'll just give this a try. I sent Jamison Williams straight up for Puka Nacua, and that was accepted. So I was very happy with
I
those
love that one,
prices.
honestly.
Thank you. And I am the people of X liked it as well. I didn't expect that one. That tweet got
Oh
like
yeah, that's
600
I
likes.
would have guessed that they loved the Jameson Williams side.
They didn't. They
They
didn't.
come for you in droves when you say anything bad about Jameson Williams.
That's what I was expecting, a more of a mixed response, but just about everybody thought it was a steal. Maybe they thought it was a redraft trade. I don't know. I mean, I thought it was pretty fair at the time, but then I started looking at like the trade history on Bulletproof and other places and seeing, first round picks traded, first
Yeah.
round picks plus, and I'm like, okay, I guess I did make a, lopsided deal here. But I don't know if I'm there yet. Like I get the idea of trading a first for him based on the market, but
Mhm.
in the vacuum, do you think that that's like a wise move, trading a first round pick for Puka?
I don't think I could stomach it. Like an actual first straight up, I don't think I could stomach it. Could I stomach a first worth of value? Yeah,
Yeah,
I could do that. But just throw in a prime piece of capital like a first for such an wild start to some like it's just I like you was completely off on Puka. It wasn't on my radar. I also do the running back tight end thing late in rookie drafts, and if I'm going to go for a wide receiver, it's going to be one that was drafted on day two. Like
yeah,
I was drafting Cedric Tillman, like in that
yeah.
spot. Like he just wasn't on my radar. I actually have one share. I don't know where it came from. Truthfully, I know that it was a startup this year, and the startup happened after the rookie draft. I didn't look it up yet. I'm assuming it happened in there,
Yeah,
but I
probably.
don't remember trading for him or anything. But yeah, like it's just hard to really try and pin down what to do with him. I think like it's just you should be in or out on Puka Nacua completely based on your league. And I know that's like a cop out answer, but a player like Puka Nacua has such a wide range of values based on who you're talking to. I think that's the only like acceptable answer. I moved him up to my wide receiver 29, and I have no idea if that's right or not. Like I truly don't know. I'm looking at like my rankings, and I like look it up, and I'm like I could go as high as 20. That makes sense to me.
Can I ask
Like
you a
I could go
question?
lower.
Who's
Yeah.
who's like the three guys right ahead of him in the rankings?
In order, Jahan Dotson, Jerry Judy, Quentin Johnston. And
Mm,
like I look at them and I think, yeah, I could easily have Puka over them. Like
right.
why not? After that it's Calvin Ridley, Zay Flowers, Brandon Ayuk. Like I
Yeah, I
sure, like
think
I could see it.
I think I'd rather have those guys, but I feel like that other group of three, I feel like I would rather have. I'm almost at the point where I think I'd rather just have him because like what would Quentin Johnston have to do at this point to I don't know, to make us that confident? Like if he had come out and
Right.
done that in week 1 and 2, he would be like top 6 dynasty wide receiver. It would be like, "Oh my
And
gosh."
that's the difference. And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted.
I was just like, I know there's the draft capital aspect, and so you come in with stronger priors, and then you're more willing to buy in.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to. You don't want to be too slow to react to that kind of a thing. So it's a
Yeah.
difficult balancing act. I've tried to send out some aggressive offers. I haven't had anything else accepted, but I do draw the line at a first. And the reason for that is for me is that I think it's still too early in the season in most cases to know where your first round pick's going to end up. Like we
Yeah.
just saw Nick
For
Chubb
sure.
break his leg last night. There could be 3 more players that happens to, and they could be the 3 best players on your team. Like we just
Right.
don't know
Yep.
how these picks are going to turn out. If I have like a absolutely broken team, like I've been in a league for a few years and I've stacked up all this value, and there's like I have depth for days, and there's no way that I'm missing the playoffs, and I'm probably a favorite. I could see firing off my first round pick for Puka just for the vibes, like just for fun,
Mhm. Yeah.
because it's what do I have to lose? But in most cases, I just don't see him progressing enough to where I'm going to regret keeping a first round pick. Like I could see regretting sending a first round pick if he comes back down to earth. Maybe Cooper Cup comes back and he's like almost phased out of the offense. He's getting, 4 or 5 targets a game. And it's like, wow, we were really just in a daze. And I could see really regretting it. But I don't know what he would have to do for me to feel like, wow, a first round pick would have been such an insane discount. Like now he's worth 2.5 first round picks. Like I just don't think that that's possible. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'd rather play it safe there.
It's tough to imagine him, you're right, being at a point where we look back on the year and say, like, You got him for a first. What a steal! You can't get him for less than 2 first. Like it is hard to imagine this. The way that happens is Cooper Cup does not come back, and like he's
Right.
done on the Rams, and Puka Nacua is there now. He is Cooper Cup.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's the only way that actually happens. The one good thing for Puka Nacua is he's playing most of his snaps outside, so they can coexist. But
Mhm.
if Cooper Cup, I'm going to have trouble saying Cooper Cup and Puka Nacua back and forth so much. I recorded like my week 2 reaction show for the JWB channel, and like I kept stumbling. So they can coexist. Like obviously, you expect Cooper Cup to still come in and then take the lion's share. And what does that leave for Puka? But you look at the rest of the roster, and it's pretty easy to say like Puka is the number 2 target. And what's that for this team? 8
Yeah.
targets a game. If
They
it's
can
8 targets a game,
consolidate for sure. They can
yeah.
consolidate for sure. I think the most likely outcome is that he does continue to produce, um, not as the wide receiver 2 in points per game, but I think he could continue and be a wide receiver 2 in fantasy
Yep.
for the rest of the season. But like, it's also a philosophical thing for me. Like when I go to make a trade, I mean, there's probably 15 at most wide receivers in Dynasty that I feel a single first isn't close to what I would need. Like once I
Mm,
get to like wide receiver 16, 17, 18, I might
yeah.
pick them over a first, but it's like not by a lot. It's like a
Yeah. We're not
first and a
far off.
second. It's like a first and a lesser asset or something. Brandon Ayuk kind of zone of things. Like he would have to get up into like the Devonta Smith tier for me to really feel like I missed out if I didn't buy him for a first. And I just don't necessarily think that's going to happen. It could. I'm going to try to acquire him in other ways, and I would recommend doing the same. Like if there's a league where the owner only wants a first, then you don't buy him in that league. You go find another league where maybe you can get him. But it's possible that ship has permanently sailed.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing before we get into more of a rapid fire mode, as we recap week 2, is just I want to touch on the Saquon Barkley injury real quick. He looked like he was going to be done for a significant amount of time. When I saw it, I was watching that game when he got injured. He threw his helmet on the ground. He seemed really angry. Now he's apparently a game time decision for their game that's in 2 days. So I don't think that's true. Like he's definitely missing that game. It's just
Yeah.
coach silliness. But it seems like he could be back within a couple of weeks, and 3 weeks seems like the longer end of the timeline. So um, that's kind of a relief for dynasty managers that it's not a more significant injury. Would you look to maybe if you have a pretty solid team, or maybe you have somebody like a Jerome Ford or a current running back fill in, would you try to buy low on Saquon? Or do you think this is a situation you want to stay away from, maybe avoid the recurring injury chance?
I'm more likely to stay away than buy in. I personally think like this is like I think the injury worries me a little bit just because I think it's an injury that can linger, that can um has high chance of like happening again to him. He's had problems with this before. I think even though it's not high ankle, which was nice, at least so they say, um, I still think it's something that could affect him for a little bit. It's just I
Yeah,
don't know if that's the route I would be going if I'm going to try and pay up for a running back. Um, I
I
think
agree.
like I'm more interested in trying to get into like Travis Etienne, maybe Kenneth Walker, if I want to pay up for something. I'm not sure if it's going to be Saquon just because of that concern. And he has some of these. I'll say real quick, like if he's an actual game time decision, that's malpractice by the Giants. There's no reason
100%.
for that.
Yeah. Yeah, he should not be playing. They're not going to beat the Niners anyway, so it's kind of
Right.
pointless. I agree. I was not buying him prior to the season. I thought he was actually kind of mispriced. I didn't think he projected significantly better than running backs going like around after him,
I agree.
Jacobs, Pollard, those guys, and he's also older than them. And I don't really think he's Saquon Barkley anymore. Like he still gets lots of volume, but if you look at the advanced metrics, it's not like he's not like a top 5 running back in the NFL type of talent where he's going to like take over the game or whatever. Like he's just getting a lot of touches. He's closer to like Joe Mixon than he is prime Saquon Barkley at this point, in my
Mm,
opinion. And that maybe that's a touch too far, but I'm not really interested in going after the currently injured 26-year-old running back on a pretty dysfunctional looking offense. That's just not the way that I want to use my assets. So I agree with you. I would much rather just pay up for one of these younger running backs that's healthy and performing. I think Josh Jacobs is actually a fantastic buy low target right now because he's getting all that work that Barkley's getting too. Like he's right up there in the opportunity
More
share.
really.
He just hasn't scored a lot of points yet, but he's going to score points, and his value might be creeping down a little bit with these single digit outputs. So that's probably where I would look, and I would just leave Barkley to your league mates.
Yep. Jacobs, like the actual raw numbers aren't quite where we want him to be, but he's getting every bit of the Raiders backfield just like last year. I would expect those points to come.
Yeah, it'll get better. I mean, he's probably not going to repeat what he did last year, but it's going to get better from where it's at right now. And he's still a good player. So I am not too worried about him. I am worried about some other players, though. We're going to jump into a segment here, some concerning trends where we're going to talk about some guys that have not started the year off on a particularly good foot. There were some players that struggled in week 1 that were able to bounce back in week 2, but these players continued to struggle in one way or another. And just need you to help me sort this out, decide where we're worried, where we're not worried. And we're going to start with what I think is a pretty easy one, pretty straightforward situation, which is Joe Burrow. He hasn't really been himself so far this season. Week 1 was absolutely atrocious. Don't even think he had 100 passing yards. They didn't score any touchdowns. Week 2 was better. They started out slow again, but he was able to connect with T. Higgins for a couple of touchdowns in the second half, and he looked better. But I just was putting the notes together for this show, and apparently he tweaked his calf. I didn't even catch that, like when I was watching the games or anything. But apparently he's not even a guarantee for Monday night. So what do you think's going on
Yeah.
with Burrow? Is this all just the calf injury bothering him, and are you concerned at all?
I actually need to look into this because I keep forgetting to do it, but I want to know, is the calf that's strained the one that he pushes off of when he throws? Uh, do you happen to know?
I don't happen to know, but
Because
I'll try to
I
find
I
out
feel
for you.
like if we did know that, which I'm sure we could find it, it would explain some because to be able to really drive the ball, you need to be able to plant on that foot and push off of it. And if that's the case, I can understand why it's really affecting him right now. The first game was a little bit excusable because they were playing in rain. The passing games on both sides were not good. But yeah, the second week, against the Ravens, it was tough. It was really tough. If there wasn't for the little bit of comeback touchdowns there in the second half, he would have had another really, really bad game. It's
Yeah.
affecting Jamar Chase at this point, which is really, really awful as well. The fact that he could possibly miss this next week is concerning.
Mhm.
Um, Joe Burrow did add some with his legs, which was nice. And now he's not going to be adding anything with his legs, I would have to guess, for the rest of the year. If he is having trouble planting and throwing, I could see how this could run into trouble. Basically, I'm looking at Joe Burrow right now as he's actually probably a mid to low end QB1 rest of the season. Just
Okay.
because I know
Fair
I'm not
enough.
counting on any rushing from him,
Yeah.
and I do expect the passing to come back around. It's just, when does it come back around? Because I wouldn't surprise me if it's another couple weeks before it's really rounding into form.
Yeah, it is his right calf, by the way. I was able to find out. So that I assume that would be the one that he's said. I can't picture right now throwing, but I assume if you're right-handed, that's the right
Yeah, you
calf
plant
that you
off the
need.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
that makes sense.
isn't great. Hopefully they just let him get healed, and that way he can come back at full strength.
Yeah, maybe
And
it's best if he does sit out this game.
yeah. I do think that I probably have cursed a couple of players because I'm looking at my best ball portfolio. There were 2 first round players that I had 15% exposure to or higher. And those were Jamar Chase and Cooper Cup. So I think I have single handedly
Yeah,
derailed the fantasy
I'm with you on
season
Cup.
of these 2. Yeah. I unfortunately was getting 102 nonstop all offseason and never getting 101. So I have a lot of chase, and
Yeah.
it has not come around for me. Maybe he'll be a low advance rate guy that wins it all for me in the end.
Hey,
But
yeah. There's always a way to spin it for best ball. There's
yeah,
always a way to spin it.
that's the best thing. That's the great thing about best ball. I can rationalize anything that goes wrong, and
Hmm.
then at the end of the year, I don't win any money, but it's fine. I can just start over the next year and do the same thing all over again. So it's great.
Yeah.
uh, But anyway, yeah, I think downgrading Burrow a little bit makes sense. Obviously, from my perspective, he's still a guy you want to continue trying to buy in Dynasty if you can. And
Oh,
if
absolutely.
he misses a game, if he has a couple more bad games, you want to be pretty aggressive in trying to get him, because getting into those elite quarterbacks is so difficult. Whenever there's even just a tiny little window opening, you have to try to get in there. Um, Fields would be a guy I would love to use if he was playing well, but he's not. So you can't use him. I'm not sure where the best quarterback starting point would be. Somebody like Cousins or Goff, who's kind of off to a hot start. Jordan Love, maybe you can take one of those guys, throw a couple firsts on top, and see if you can get up to Joe Burrow. But regardless of whether this injury lingers a little bit, that's going to be a good move for you in the long run.
Yeah, I agree completely. If it, like you said, any chance you have at buying, but when elite assets like this have down periods of time, it doesn't make them necessarily cheaper. It just makes them available,
Yes.
which they weren't before.
Got to get a foot in the door, and a lot of times you can't. The door is locked shut, but when there's some bad games back to back, that's when you start to see a little bit of an opportunity. Um, Maybe we have a situation like that here with Kyle Pitts. I tend to think it's a little bit more concerning than that. It's really looking like another season of disappointment for us. Kyle Pitts stands. I know you're one as well, but the guy's 29th in points per game among tight ends, and he was just out targeted and outproduced by Jonnu
So
Smith.
depressing.
It's kind of hard to imagine that it could be this bad. Like if I was drawing up the worst case scenario for Kyle Pitts, I feel like it would have been better than this. We've just seen so much evidence of the talent, but Arthur Smith does not seem interested in getting him involved at all. So what do you think this is just going to continue the rest of the year? Is it going to get better for Kyle Pitts?
It's a hard time. It's hard to believe that it will get better for. I think he seems to just be like running wind sprints or something. Like I think he's just relegated to being like their field stretcher at this point. Like I don't understand how you use Kyle Pitts only in that way. Granted, he can do it. He stretches the seam probably like of any other tight end because of his athleticism. But like because of athleticism, you should try and throw some quick passes to him. So maybe some crossers, quick curls, even screens to him. Like these are things that should be happening
They
for a player
threw a
like Kyle
screen to
Pitts.
Jonnu Smith. They did a screen to Jonnu
Yeah,
Smith.
yeah.
Kyle Pitts is
Why?
literally just
You
everything
have the
about Jonnu
decision.
Smith, but better. He's literally there's not one thing that Jonnu Smith does better, other than
You
he
have the
used to play
decision
for Arthur
to
Smith.
make. I can't imagine being in an NFL team, being in an NFL team, being in the coaching staff, being in these rooms, saying we're going to design this screen to our tight end, and it's not for Kyle Pitts. How do we get here?
I
I
just
don't
think that
understand.
there must be some sort of disdain, some sort of spite that's happening where like Arthur Smith genuinely doesn't like Kyle Pitts because I cannot tell myself any other story. We know what he can do as a player. I just don't understand how he could not succeed like in any system. I don't know if I buy the idea that he's not a fit for the scheme or whatever. Like
Right,
Jonnu Smith doesn't do anything better than Kyle Pitts. There's no reason to draw up a screen for him and not Pitts. Like you must be galaxy braining this idea of Pitts as a decoy or something.
right.
I don't know, but it's crazy. They drafted him 4th overall. He's always open. Like I watch the Falcons game. I make a point to try to put the Falcons games on when I can because I really want to know what the heck is happening. And I have a lot of Kyle
Right.
Pitts. He's always open. Like I don't know. It's
Maybe is like
crazy.
he too fast for Desmond Ritter because like everybody else is like a 4.5 or worse, and like he's the only one with legit
Right.
speed. So maybe Ritter just like can't comprehend his speed and can't get on time. I don't.
I would believe
The
that.
the point is here is that I'm seeing Kyle Pitts get traded, and I like you ever you see a trade go down your league, and you're like, crap, I didn't realize this person had this person valued this way.
Yeah,
Like I saw Kyle Pitts get
exactly.
traded for like the equivalent of a first, and it's like you see that and you go like, I wish I would have known to just go
Right.
and check on the manager of Kyle Pitts. I I have to believe that at some point Kyle Pitts has this amazing season that we all believe will happen for him. I'm not sure it's happening this year. I doubt it happens this year. Basically, I'm willing to pay a first so that he can sit on my bench and not do anything because I think that's probably where he has to be at this point. Like it's hard to reliably or to actually put him in your lineup at this point. I don't know how you
Yeah.
can unless you literally just don't have another option. Like I'd rather play Zach Ertz easily
Yeah.
over Kyle Pitts right now, which is wild.
At this point, I think you have to treat Kyle Pitts kind of like the way you would treat Kyler Murray, which is that
Yeah,
he's just
you're gonna
he's an
redshirt him on
he's
your
an
team.
elite talent. He's literally redshirting on your team. Just treat him like he's a draft pick or whatever. Like it's worth buying. It's worth buying Pitts at a discounted price and then using the surplus value that you would have paid to get him in a normal circumstance to go buy another tight end that you can start. Like
Yeah,
you can go buy Pitts and Hunter Henry. Like you can go buy
yeah,
Pitts and Hayden Hurst and just wait. because
Mhm.
I mean, I guess I can just keep saying eventually it's going to happen. I don't know, maybe it won't, but I do believe it's going to happen.
I
He's going to have
refuse
a
to
good season.
believe I
The
refuse
problem
to believe
is
that he won't
the problem is
hit.
Arthur Smith refuses to get fired because he just keeps winning games. It's hard to imagine him losing his job because he does do a lot of things well as a coach. They do win games. I don't think that their current setup is conducive to Super Bowl wins, but it could be conducive to winning a bad division and getting another year to do this nonsense. So I don't know. It's rough. It's kind of like the DJ Moore situation that we've all been through for years and years, but it's at a scarcer position and where Kyle Pitts, like, yeah, he's not doing anything, but most tight ends also aren't doing anything. So it's kind of worth holding on to him. And the ceiling is, I mean, it's tight end one
Yeah,
overall. And we probably sound like idiots to some people that are like, what are you talking about? Like, this
yeah.
dude literally just got out targeted by Johnny Smith. But I'm telling you, he's really good. I'm still trying to buy him. The problem is I want to buy him mainly on teams where I'm tanking, but I already
Yeah.
have him on all those teams because he's the reason that they're tanking.
Yeah.
He turned them into tanking teams, so I don't need to go and buy him. Um, but I do want to kind of look into it wherever I can, especially if I have extra value. If I have like an extra first round pick that I picked up, or I have like a strong contending roster and I have like good bench assets that I can consolidate into a Kyle Pitts, that's where you want to grab him because if he does hit, you can turn that team into a real dynasty, like a real year in, year out contender.
It might seem counterintuitive to do on a contending team, you buying him for a first, but it actually kind of like extends your window in a way because when he does come to form, he'll be worth much more than what you paid for him, and he's just
Yeah.
another elite asset on that team that can help it continue going.
You also you always need a backup tight end, so you might as well spend a first on that. Got to have depth in case your starter Tyler Higbee gets hurt or something like that. I hate myself, and I hate Arthur Smith. I don't know if I hate myself or Arthur Smith more. That's the thing. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who I hate more in this scenario, but there's a lot of it going around. Justin Fields is another player who's off to a concerning start. He's unlike Kyle Pitts, he's actually playing poorly. He's experiencing the consequences of his own actions here, and he is also failing to score fantasy points. So the thought with Fields is like, okay, he can be bad, but he'll at least score fantasy points. He's not really doing either right now, which is kind of
Yep.
like a nightmare scenario. And as a result, his value is dropping like a rock. I have been shopping him in leagues where I have him, and I can tell you that nobody wants him. Nobody's interested. His valuation as the top 10 as a top 10 startup pick is gone. I mean, it is dust in the wind. So I don't really know what to do with him if you have him on a team because you can't even trade him like to get into another quarterback at this point, unless that quarterback is also terrible. So, do you have any field shares that you're kind of sweating out right now?
Yeah, I've got a couple. And you're right. There's nothing you can really do except really hold. It's not worth selling because I don't think you can actually find something worth selling for. It's just an unfortunate set of events. Like he's never fixed his flaws. His time in the NFL that he
Yeah,
has still a slow processor. Still takes way too many sacks. Some sacks is okay. You have quarterbacks like this that take a lot of sacks. So they're trying to make a play. Joe Burrow takes a lot of sacks.
yes,
You
he
know.
does. Russell Wilson.
Um, Yep, Russell Wilson, another one. So
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, it's like he's not processing quick enough. He's still taking these sacks, but then the Bears are just accentuating his flaws at this point with the offensive system that they run. Uh, their wide receivers are running routes in the same place to the same spot. Like there's this clip going around of Roshan Johnson like running up the seam, and Justin Fields doesn't see him, and then Matt Eberflus like said after the game that Roshan wasn't even supposed to be there. So like Justin Fields wasn't going to be looking for him in that spot to begin with.
Oh, man.
Um, it's just like it's a disaster. I think you basically just have to hold unless
Yeah.
there's a Fields truther in your league who's like been waiting for their chance to pounce and get Fields off of you. I think you're just stuck.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, you can't just sell like there's no point in just selling low because I mean, his value is going down, but like trading him straight up for Jordan Love or whatever doesn't really fix any problems for you. I would rather just wait and see if he can put together a couple of good games and then try to get out,
Hmm.
or maybe just let him try to turn this around. But it is certainly looking more and more depressing for Fields. I Can't say I believed in any of his weapons, so I wasn't left holding the bag on DJ Moore or any of those guys. But just a nightmare offense once again. And no design runs. Where are the design runs? That's
Right.
literally like the one thing he knows how to do. Let the kid run. I don't know. Maybe they'll figure it out, but not a good situation. I think you're right. You probably have to hold. The last guy here, concerning start, Najee Harris. I saw this coming, but not this bad. Like I've been talking about fading Harris. I know that's kind of like a trendy thing to do. I'm not the only person who was fading Najee Harris, but he did have an ADP in the fourth round of startups and the fourth round of best ball drafts. So some people still saw something in him, but he's got 5 points per game so far through 2 weeks. He's being almost double. Jalen Warren has almost doubled up his points per game without even scoring any touchdowns. Um, the opportunities have been pretty split between them, and Warren has made bigger plays. He's been more explosive. He's been more involved in the passing game. This is a sell low situation for me. Like this is like the boat is sinking. You need to jump out of it. And I don't know how low is too low, but I'm thinking like dangerously low. Like I would take a second round pick basically at this point for Najee Harris.
I think I'm almost there. This is foolish of me, and I am not a Najee Harris person. I haven't been. I have him on one team, and it's from a startup draft 2 years ago. And basically, they've only held through because it's a points per carry league or points
Yeah.
per first down carrying league, rushing first down. I can get there. So yeah, like it's they have played two tough defenses to start the year, which makes me think like if the Steelers offense can just like get it together a little bit more, like there'll be some brighter pastures ahead, but I'm not sure how bright those pastures are. So that's the problem. Like a second is probably just lower than I'm willing to go,
Yeah.
but I understand wanting to just get out before the bottom completely falls out, which is a realistic possibility this year.
Yeah. A second is definitely on the lower end of the range. I mean, I'd want it to be maybe closer to an early second than just like a base second. But um, yeah, I mean, I saw a tweet. David Gautieri was putting up some names of guys that he'd rather have, and he mentioned like Brian Robinson, and then he was like Sam Laporta. These are guys that he would just take straight up, and I think I'm there. Like I'm there. Brian Robinson has been better. He's been getting
I,
all that volume we thought Najee was going to get. Go
I
ahead.
saw that list and thought to myself, I don't think you can get any of these people for
Yeah,
Najee Harris.
that's true. In a lot of situations, you probably can't. I don't know because I literally have never rostered Najee Harris in a dynasty league. Not to brag, I literally have never had him on a team, so I have no idea what you can get.
Yeah,
If you offer him to me, not much,
right.
but yeah, I mean it is rough, and I don't really see it getting much better because I don't think Kenny Pickett is it. I don't think that offense is going to be good, and I think Jalen Warren is better than Najee Harris, and I think he's going to continue to get opportunities. So I think it's going to be real bad. Like this is like low end RB2 at best for the season, and then who knows after that. That's kind of how it looks for me. And I would definitely rather get into a player that I do believe in the talent of. So if you still have him, send out 20 offers this week, and just hope one of them gets accepted, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna move on here. I need to pick up the pace a little bit. I've been dragging my feet. We have a lot of players here. There's a lot going on in these early weeks where we're trying to figure out what's real and what's not. So I have a few names of players who had vastly different week 1 and week 2 performances. And let's just quickly try to figure out where the truth is. Is it somewhere in the middle? Or one of those weeks better signal than the other? Let's start with Christian Kirk, who looked pretty much phased out of the Jaguars offense in week 1. He lost his 2 wide receiver sets to Zay Jones. He had 1 catch for 9 yards, comes back in week 2, has like a million catches against the Chiefs. He's the featured guy. Is this just one of those offenses where it's going to be a different guy every week? Did something shift for the Jaguars? What do you make of Christian Kirk at this point after 2 weeks?
Yes, he's not playing in 2 wide receiver sets, but the Jags run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets, one of the highest rates in the entire league. So it doesn't worry me like too much. Obviously, it does hurt him, but it's not
Yeah.
like this giant thing that I'm worrying about. I do think that like it's gonna change every week who's having the big week for the Jags, but I think someone's always gonna be having a big week for the Jags because they're a really good offense.
Yeah, I agree with
So
that.
so it's like still something you want to be invested in. I think it's just you have readjusting the expectations that like now instead of wide receiver 2, we're talking about a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And that's probably more what Kirk is. I think he was playing a little bit above himself last year in an offense that did lack a true alpha wide receiver. I think more often than not, you're going to see Ridley leading that team in targets, but for whatever reason, they had a matchup with Kirk in that game and he was peppered. And that could happen again. He seems like the perfect guy to roster in like a best ball dynasty league. But in a managed
Yeah.
league, he's going to give you some headaches, and he's never going to be like a super high ceiling guy. So he's not really someone I want to go out and buy right now. If he's really
I,
cheap, then sure. But at this point, he's probably not because he just had a big game.
I didn't catch it till after the game, but Scott Barrett actually put out some stats that basically Kirk is incredibly better against man coverage than he is versus zone, and the Chiefs play an incredible amount of man coverage.
Okay.
So I imagine that has something to do with it, and maybe that's just a nugget now that we look at moving forward for him.
Yeah, maybe that's predicted. Maybe you can go ahead and try to game the matchups and see, is this defense going to play more man or zone? And maybe you can start him in the right weeks. That would be pretty good insight if so. The next guy I'm more bullish on, and that's Drake London, who was kind of dead on his feet after week one, just like Kyle Pitts. He actually had 0 catches in week one on 1 target. And it was like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. You need to trade Drake London away for Zay Flowers, or you traded Drake London away for Puka Nacua while you can, because he's never going to get any targets. Well, he came back in week 2. He led the Falcons in targets. I think he had 8, and he scored a touchdown, and he looked like Drake London doing Drake London things. I'm back in. I mean, I was never out, but I'm happy to see that. And I think you're going to see more of that than you are going to see the 0 catch games. I don't think in this particular offensive environment he's going to ever flirt with wide receiver 1 production, but I think he's a guy where we know the talent's there. He's probably going to be a wide receiver 2 for the season. And we can just keep on hoping for brighter days ahead.
Yeah, we've talked about it. Everyone's talked about it at this point, but his rookie year was absolutely elite. Everything past like the initial just raw numbers for his rookie season was elite. He's an elite wide receiver. I will not stop investing in Drake London. I realize that you're probably going to get wide receiver 2 at best this year, and that's okay because I just want him on my rosters.
Yeah, I do think there are still some people that don't quite get just how good he was as a rookie. Like if you took his rate stats, like his per route stats, and you put him into the Vikings offense from last year, he would have been Justin Jefferson. Like he would have had a Justin Jefferson type rookie season, the way that he dominated targets and consolidated that offense around him. So he is that dude. He's really, really good. It's just a matter of betting on the situation fixing itself. But as we saw this week, there's still going to be usable production for him in Atlanta most weeks. They ran very few plays in week 1. It was obviously a weird game. But I think if you look back, he's played 6 games with Ritter, or 7 games now. In almost all those games, he's had like 70 or more receiving yards. So I think week 1 is the outlier and week 2 is more so the truth.
Yep.
Next guy is Rachaad White, a running back for the Buccaneers, who I have less talent confidence in than I do Drake London. I'm not a big believer in Rachaad White as a running back, but he played a lot better in week 2 than he did in week 1. He was efficient. He was involved in the passing game. He was a bell cow. It definitely showed glimmers of like what people were hoping that he could be coming out as a prospect last year when they were investing in him in rookie drafts. Do you think that that was the start of something for White? Was it just an easy matchup against the Bears? Where does the truth lie?
Yeah, there's nothing like the Bears defense to get you on the right track. This one is, I think, closer to this, but not quite there. Just because I think that I liked Rachaad White as a prospect personally. Good size, speed, receiving profile. Not really shifty was the one thing I think that you could like really look down on him upon. He really just kind of does run in a straight line. But we do know that he's just going to get this massive workload for the Buccaneers. Like I don't think Sean Tucker's actually threatening him. You can look at the rushing yards over expecting. It's not like Sean Tucker's doing better than Rachaad White at this point. So I think he is going to continue to get this big workload. And with Baker Mayfield playing inspired football, granted against a couple bad defenses, the offense is moving. So I think like they're going to get into scoring position a decent amount, much more than people probably thought they were going to entering the season. But like I also don't really want Rachaad White on my rosters just because I'm not confident in the points per game every
Oh,
week.
that was a real bait and switch that you just pulled there.
Yeah, it's like, do you? I mean, do you just want to keep Rashad White on your roster for maybe 11 points per game? Like, I don't know. That doesn't seem
No,
that
I
exciting
don't.
to me.
I don't. I think this is a sell high situation or sell,
Yeah,
medium situation. I was into him as a prospect, but after year one, I just didn't think that he had the juice. And I think I would be looking to move him. I think this is similar to like a Najee Harris situation where he's getting the volume now, and
yeah,
that's great. But like, do we know how long that keeps up for? If Sean Tucker isn't good, then that helps because there's no reason to turn it over to someone else. But it's just that's not the kind of running back I'm really looking to hold on to in Dynasty, where it's just like, yep, he's just getting the projected volume and he's getting the bare minimum with it, and that's great. I would much rather be investing in players who I do think are good, who I think can hold on to those roles. Like if I want that type of player, I would just trade for Jerome Ford. Like I could just trade Rashad White down to
yeah. What can
Ford
you get
and
on
pick
top
up
to go down to Jerome Ford? I bet it's a good amount.
exactly because it's either both guys are 1 year rentals in my mind, and neither like I don't think Rashad White has significantly more long term job security than someone like Jerome Ford. So I don't want to treat him as like a higher class of asset. So I would rather just try to pivot off of him. Two more guys here, quarterbacks, Daniel Jones and Geno Smith. Both really struggled in week one. Both played better in week two. Daniel Jones was weird because it really wasn't until the like fourth quarter. But then he did play some pretty sharp football, granted against a really, really bad team. Geno Smith just kind of played a complete game that was much better, toe to toe with the Lions. Massive point total in that one, and he was efficient in that game. So I am pretty worried about Daniel Jones. I'm not super worried about Geno Smith. Do you have a different take?
No, I'm basically there with you. Daniel Jones is way too consistent of a passer to like reliably have the ceiling games that we want. Like these games can happen. We know that that can happen for him. It's just he's too inconsistent of a player to consistently have. That's why he'll end up as a like low end QB1, but it'll be like a bunch of low end QB2 finishes and a couple top five finishes. It
Yeah.
just doesn't work out that well. Geno Smith, I've been into for a long time now. Well, as long time as you can because like it hasn't been around for that long basically. But I the offense I think is just very good. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, Kenneth Walker. They're passing more. They're passing. Pass rate over expected has gone up with Shane Waldron there. I'm just into Geno Smith at cost in general, and I think it's going to continue.
Yeah, it looks like his risk of turning back into a pumpkin is significantly lower after this performance. It seems like he does still have whatever magic sauce he had last year. Daniel Jones just still looks like Daniel Jones to me. I mean, he wasn't good last year really as a passer. He just really overperformed as a rusher. He still isn't good as a passer. My issue with Daniel Jones isn't points he's going to score now. It's just like the points he's going to score later. I understand the job security that's sort of built into his contract, but at the same time, if the Giants can barely beat the Cardinals, they might be in a spot to take a guy like Drake May or some quarterback early in the draft. And I don't think they're going to pass on that opportunity because of Daniel Jones and some kind of cap hit. So what I need to see from Daniel Jones is like I need to see them winning games and at least getting the Giants out of contention for a top quarterback. At least survive in the Andy Dalton method of yesteryear, where it's just like, oh, sorry, we got a wild
Yeah,
card and lost in the first round. I guess you have to play me again next year. As long as
right.
that keeps happening, he can keep being a QB1. But I would just rather try to turn my attention elsewhere to other quarterbacks.
Yeah, he's one of those. Like we talked about Joe Burrow earlier. Add the first on him to go get Joe Burrow.
Yeah. Yeah. I would add a lot onto Daniel Jones to go get Joe Burrow. You don't want your high end super flex quarterbacks being not talented. Like I just want a good
Yeah.
quarterback, actually good quarterback. So all right. What about some other players we can be buying? We're gonna move into some buys and some sells. If we have time, we'll talk about some of the young quarterbacks and then we'll wrap this thing up. But big buys for me. I have three guys. I'll just throw them all out at once because it's really the same play in different levels. This week I've been sending out a lot of offers. I say this week, it's literally Tuesday, but all I've done since the game's ended is send out offers. I've been trying to pick up Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, and Tony Pollard. So these are three running backs that were kind of going in a similar range in dynasty startups. They were going in a similar range in best ball. Pollard going in the second, Jacobs in the third, Etienne usually early fourth. and they've all played well or gotten a lot of opportunities so far this year. With Jacobs, it's just like last year. He's getting all the touches. Points haven't come. We talked about him earlier. I want to lean into that, knowing that there's going to be better weeks ahead. With Etienne, we've seen him also turn into kind of a full-time bell cow. They didn't even want to play Tank Bigsby last week. They had Dearness Johnson in the game instead. So Etienne is getting a high percentage of the running back rushes. He's running the routes. He's getting targets for the, he got 5 targets, I think, in week 1. Only 2 last week, but that whole offensive situation was pretty bad. But overall, he is dominating the running back opportunities, and he is a very good player. And then Tony Pollard. I mean, my goodness, the amount of volume that they are willing to feed this guy. When they play defenses that are not the Jets, he is going to go absolutely insane. So these are just 3 targets that I think all can finish inside the top 12. I think Pollard has a very good chance to finish top 5. And on my contending teams, like if I need running back production, if I lost Chubb, if I lost Barkley, if I'm waiting for Jonathan Taylor, I don't care. I want one of these guys in my RB1 or RB2 spot.
Yeah, they all have incredible volume profiles right now for their respective teams, which is really what you want. And all 3 of them have shown immense talent at some point if they're not currently doing it. I wonder how much you have to add on to Rachaad White to get to any of these 3.
Yeah, I think that's the right question to ask. Would you be willing, if you're a contending team and you're trying to strengthen that RB2 spot, would you add your first round pick to Rachaad White to get one of these guys? Assuming like if you're in the mindset that it's late, which like I said is risky,
Yeah.
but would you go that far?
For Etienne and Pollard, yes.
Okay.
Jacobs, not quite. I think you can get away with less.
I think that's fair. I would definitely do it for Etienne and Pollard. And yeah, I think I'm right there with you. With Jacobs, I'd be trying to offer a little bit less or at least something that's not the pick.
Yeah.
I think he's on the worst offense of the 3. And I also think he's the least versatile player of the 3. Like I think he's the most like a volume driven player, whereas Etienne and Pollard, I think, are going to make more big plays. So I agree with you there. He would be the bottom of that list for me, but all 3 of these guys, I think, are going to score very well the rest of the way. And as all the running backs around them just start dropping, it could be them too, but right now they're the ones that are healthy. That makes them all the more valuable as you get more and more of an advantage over your league mates. If you have the healthy running backs that have all the touches and all the other guys are hurt, that puts them at, an even higher level. That's why Kelsey and Andrews and them are so valuable, because there's no other tight ends that are getting that kind of volume. Could be the same thing with these running backs, the last one standing. So don't wait, go out and send some offers for them. Who is the guy you're trying to buy right now?
Yeah. So first it's Nico Collins. Last year, 19.1% target share in the games he played, but he had the 90th catchable ball rate thrown to him last year. Just if you're good with
The
numbers,
Davis Mills
that's really bad.
effect.
Yeah, the Davis Mills effect. But now CJ Stroud, who's known for his accuracy, and Nico Collins is one of these. He's big, athletic, runs a lot downfield, has a fairly high ADOT, which is fine because that's kind of what we want for a lot of our wide receivers, because those lead to more points. And he needs a quarterback who's willing to throw it to him when he doesn't look open, because Nico Collins isn't necessarily a wide receiver who's like getting this giant separation against his corner. He relies on his physicality a lot and can go up and get it. He needs a quarterback who's willing to put it to a spot where he can go get it. And CJ Stroud is that guy. And we've seen it happen to start this year. Nico Collins up to a 22% target share in these first 2 games. Last week, this week had the 27.6 PPR point game in his big really show out his I'm here game. And I realized the price is obviously going up for Nico Collins after this, but I think that you are buying him along the ascension, because I don't think it's done. While it might seem expensive at this point, I think it's going to be more expensive if you wait.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lag effect with his value, because unlike somebody like Puka, where his entire career is the sample of him being incredible, we have a couple years of Nico being not so incredible. Weighed down by the offense, but also developing as a player. And so people are going to be slower to fully adjust to that type of production. So I do think, his price is still on the rise. You want to try to catch him while he's still going up. I agree with that. I did pick up an extra share of him last week in a league via trade, and I had been trying to stack him up. He's my most drafted wide receiver in best ball, so I was all on the Nico
Love
train.
that.
I'm loving it so far. I want to go
Yeah.
back and watch some of that game because I did not see much of it, but Sleeper does the notifications when there's like a big play, and I
Yeah.
swear he
Over and
must
over.
have had 5 20-yard catches in that game because he kept coming up
Yeah.
with like 20 yards, 32 yards, 26 yards. And I was like, what is going on? This guy has an insane role in the offense. The Texans are slinging the ball all over the place. The pass attempts are probably going to come down over time because it's just not sustainable, but they could be near the league lead because they are always behind.
Yes.
And they apparently can't run the ball. So this could be a pretty fantasy friendly situation for Nico all season.
Yeah. I completely agree. And
Yeah.
I do think they're going to continue to pass. Like I love that they're willing to do so already with CJ Stroud.
So let's try to make this a little bit actionable. You say his price is on the rise. Can we try to ballpark like what's a realistic offer to send for Nico Collins? Like 2 seconds? Is that the right
Oh,
ballpark?
I'll send 2 seconds in a second to get Nico Collins. That's a pretty easy one for me. I would prefer to tier down, honestly. Like I think that's one of my favorite ways to trade personally is to try and find what I think is going to be a similar asset. So like a lot of the wide receivers we talked about before, like the Jerry Jeudy, the Jahan Dotson, um, hell, I might even talk about Puka Nacua trading down to Nico Collins. I
Oh
want to know
man.
what you can get on top of these types of players to get Nico
Mhm.
Collins on your team.
I'll tell you my
Uh,
number one guy for this. My number one guy for this because he just had a big game. DJ Moore. DJ Moore down to
love that.
Nico
Love
Collins.
that.
I will literally take whatever you'll give me on top because I genuinely think I'm like pretty close to having them like neck and neck to where I would just rather have Nico.
Yeah, like I already think of Nico Collins as a top 24 wide receiver rest of the season for this year.
Yeah.
So, and he's young, like his third year in the league. So, like I keep on pushing him up higher and higher up my rankings. Um, yeah, I would see anybody in that general range. What
Yeah.
if I can get anything on top and a good portion of them, I wouldn't really care if I did. Uh, if you wanted to come up to him, I don't know, like what do you have to add on to Sky Moore to get Nico Collins? Maybe you don't even have to add that much on like Sky Moore to get
You think
him.
so? I think Sky Moore is like poison. I don't think anybody
I
wants Sky
I
Moore.
th- I do think that he is poison to a lot of people, but I do think there are some people still holding on. Him coming off a touchdown as well, even though it's probably not the most reliable touchdown to happen. But yeah, basically, like that's the way I would try to attack Nico Collins is bouncing around. I never basically want to just be like, pick for player. Like I just don't like making trades like that.
I agree with you. Yeah.
So I always try to find the way to like work my way to that player that I'm trying to target.
It's pretty telling that our sell high moment for Sky Moore comes in a game where he was out targeted by Justin Watson. Uh,
Well,
like,
the times are tough
this
for
is
Sky
it.
Moore.
This is it. You got a 10% target share in a game where Mahomes threw it 48 times or whatever. Like we got it. This is it. We got to sell him.
Yeah,
It's rough. I tried to send Sky Moore for Puka Nacua after week 1 in one of my leagues, and that did not work.
you get laughed at.
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like that line of thinking. I actually think I need to be more aggressive in some offers for Nico because I've been trying to trade for him, but you're right. I think I'm even lagging a little bit in my evaluation of him because he really should be rising up now that he's tied to a good young quarterback too. Like
yeah,
CJ Stroud looks like a hit. Like he's playing very well. So
yeah,
we should be willing to do that. You had one more guy listed as a buy. This is the dynasty.
yeah,
The dynasty. You look up dynasty buy in the dictionary and you see a picture of Kyler Murray. So go ahead. Give us
yeah.
the case.
I'll make it really easy because we've been talking about this ad hoc, like ad nauseum, just nonstop. He's only ever been elite at scoring fantasy points when he's on the field. He's going to be back on the field at some point. I think it's going to happen this year. And even if the Cardinals do get the #1 overall pick and draft um, Caleb Williams, someone's going to trade for Kyler Murray, and they're not trading for Kyler Murray to not play him. He's going to be
Right.
playing for someone. I like just take the chance to get him while he's at his cheapest.
I agree. I think Fields and Daniel Jones are two guys that I am trying to turn into Kyler wherever I can, and I'll just eat it at quarterback. Like I'll go buy Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford, Kyler Murray and Desmond Ritter, and I will just ride until Kyler comes back, and at least know that I'm getting an actual good quarterback. So yeah, I would be trying to trade Justin Fields or Daniel Jones, turn him into Kyler Murray. I'll go pick up another quarterback on the cheap if I can, like Desmond Ritter, Matt Stafford, or something like that, and just try to get by until Kyler comes back. But at least then I know I'm insulated with like an actual good quarterback who's not going to lose his job.
Yeah, I
So
think like even depending on like certain ranking websites that you look at, like Kyler Murray's behind Daniel Jones, which is wild.
yeah, in some spots, their ADPs were really converging towards the end of the offseason. And so, we'll see how much that's held. But this is the time when points are being scored, which means guys that are not in lineups, they do get kind of discounted a little bit. And if you have a team that's like kind of antsy to compete, like, oh man, I have some other good pieces. If I could just turn Kyler Murray into something useful, I know because I've had that thought, and I'm a huge Kyler Murray truther, but I'm like, oh, maybe I should just trade him and get a quarterback that I can start, because then maybe I can make the playoffs. And you know, so that's the time that you want to really send out those types of offers.
Yeah.
Let's flip over to the other side of the coin here. Players were selling. The two guys I had listed, we've already ripped on enough. Rashad White and Daniel Jones. They were top of my list. I'll throw out Justin Fields too. I want to sell these guys. I mean, I could be convinced, I guess, to actually buy shares of Justin Fields if the price was low enough. Like in some leagues, people are just totally abandoning ship. But for the most part, he's still a sell to me, especially if you can get like 75-80% of his past market value. But you've got some interesting guys here. So who are you looking to pivot off of here after week 2?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about him in the same breath as Brian Robinson and DeAndre Swift because it's the same kind of process for me. And I want to state first off that like these are both players that I actually like at this point in time. I think they were worthwhile assets. I realize that there's going to be like people who listen to this and they're going to have that same thing that we see on Twitter, which is anytime as a good player has a game, you're supposed to sell him in Dynasty. Like that's
Right.
not what this is. This is like these two players, I think, could end up in this range similar to Rashad White, where they have a points per game where it's just like it's fine, but it's not too exciting. DeAndre Swift, while I think he has taken the command of the backfield, I do think that they are still going to work in Kenneth Gainwell when he's back. And I'm not positive how much of the offense DeAndre Swift will get. You
Yeah.
look at like Miles Sanders last year, 11 touchdowns, but was a back end RB2 in points per game.
Yeah.
I think DeAndre Swift is better than him, but I don't know how much better he's going to have points per game on this offense. Their offense actually also looks worse, I would say, this year than it did
Yes.
last year. Brian Robinson, I think, is playing above what we'd expect for him to this point. I do think he's a quality running back. I think he's showing they can help in the passing game more than people expected. But again, like this is a player that I would think probably lives in like the 12 points per game range, maybe, if we are just like simulating the rest of the season. And if
Yeah.
that's the case with both these players coming off of this weeks they did, I just want to know what will it take. We've talked about this with these running backs. This is like a reoccurring thing through this show is what will it take to move up into that upper echelon of running backs with these? How much do I have to add to get to the same running backs we've talked about over and over again now that we like how much is it going to take to get to Etienne from Brian Robinson? Can I send a first on Brian Robinson and get Etienne? Because I will do that. Things like
Yeah.
that.
I think that's the right way to think about it. And it's going to depend on your league. Like these guys are not going to be sells in every league, because there are leagues out there where nobody's buying in
Yeah.
to this type of performance. So you have to know your league. You have to be fluid based on the other people around you in that micro market that you can navigate. But you have these spike weeks for, younger running backs that have had some excitement around them. And it's probably not sustainable to that degree, just based on the offensive environment and any kind of like limitations the players have. Um, Neither of these guys are RB1s. I will be shocked if either of these guys finishes inside the top 12 or even frankly close in points per game. I don't think that they will. And so that's where, if you have the opportunity to sell them high into an actual lead asset, like a Tony Pollard, like an ETN, I do think that's the right move. And so I do like them on this list. It's just going to depend on the interest that your league mates have. But like with Swift, for
Yeah.
example, he ran the ball 27 times in the game against the Vikings. So yes, his fantasy point total is all fine and good, but the Eagles are not going to run that many plays or that many rush attempts in most games. And with Gainwell healthy, he probably won't have as high of a percentage of those rushes. The main thing is like the targets, right? Where are the targets coming from? Well, the overall play volume or the overall target volume is lower in this type of an offense where the passing volume is lower, but they also just don't target running backs that frequently. So I just don't think you're going to see him consolidating enough work. And then for Brian Robinson, like, do we really think the Commanders offense is one that we want to be buying into? Do we think Brian Robinson is, an explosive enough player where he's going to make enough plays, catch enough passes to really get there? Probably not. These are good running backs that just have some limitations to their upside, and that's the kind of situation where you want to cash out.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap things up with a quick discussion of young quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson, I have to get him in here because he was having an absolutely ridiculous game before he left with a concussion in week 2. The guy looks like the absolute truth. He had 2 fantastic rushing touchdowns that looked like vintage Cam Newton, and he is throwing the ball with confidence. He's accurate. How high is this guy going to go? I mean, if we were doing a startup right now, he would have to be like 107.
Oh yeah, I have him up there now. I believe I have him as my 109 now. And I can see the argument for going higher. He's shown everything that he's need to show for any doubts that you had, I would say, for him at this point. I don't think there's a question to be had.
Yeah, I would be I would make some like irresponsible trade offers for Anthony Richardson. Like Justin Fields and a first for Anthony Richardson. Like I would legitimately do that. I would do that right now.
I don't know if I'm there, but like I
think I'm there because I think that the scoring potential of the two is clearly identical. Like I think Anthony Richardson has every capability to score like Justin Fields, but he has so much job security out in front of him. It's like you're buying Justin Fields a year and a half ago. So I don't know. I think I would do that. The vibes are just so much better in Indianapolis. Like it seems like there's an actual cohesion between him and the coaching staff. I think this is the beginning of something big. And then to a lesser extent, CJ Stroud has also looked very good. Not the same kind of ceiling that we see with Richardson because he's not as much of a rusher, but he's looking very competent out there. I think he's looking like a solid hit, and his value is probably going to rise from year 1 to year 2, just based off of how he's commanding the offense, how much they're letting him throw the ball already. Is he somebody you're also interested in trying to acquire at this point?
I am. And I do think like he's shown that he's like willing to run a little bit more than he would in college. Actually, I thought it would be the case because he does have the athleticism to do it. But I do think that you have to, remember what his real upside is because he's not much of a runner. Like he had a little bit, but not that much. So when that's the case, like if he's going to continue to rise and play as well as he is, really what's going to make me want to do is try and use him to get into one of the elite QBs if possible.
Yeah, that's still the move, but I think that group is shrinking for me a little bit. Like
Sure.
I'm not using him to get into Fields. Obviously, I'm not using him to get into Deshaun Watson. He's giving me
I'm going to aim higher if I'm going to try and do it.
Yeah, it's got to be Herbert, Burrow, Lawrence. It's
Yeah.
got to be that range.
Yes.
I would also try to trade up from Stroud into Anthony Richardson, to be quite honest with you, just because of that ceiling. So I think that's right. But they're both guys you're going to be happy that you have right now.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Last question before we get out of here. I've got a keep trade cut for you. 3 young quarterbacks. Keep trade cut: Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder.
Keep Pickett, trade Howell, cut Ridder. The way you said it, but I don't feel good about that. I really want to say keep Howell.
Then do it.
All right, keep Howell, trade Pickett. I don't think Pickett's very good. I think Howell at least has the potential to be really good.
Yeah. The correct answer is actually cut all 3. No, I'm just kidding. I honestly still don't know where I land on this type of a question. I think I'm probably sitting with. I actually think I might put Ridder first in this group because I don't think any of them are good, but I think the Falcons are going to win the most games. So I think he's
interesting.
I think he has the best chance to just find himself in the driver's seat again next year, whereas the other 2 guys might end up just getting replaced by virtue of their draft positioning. But so I'll say keep Ridder, trade Howell, cut Pickett. I'm done with Kenny Pickett. I don't think he has it. So that has been our week 2 recap. Anything else you want to leave the people with before we get out of here, Wyatt?
You can follow me on Twitter, WyattB_FF. You can find all my content, JWB Fantasy Football gwb.com, gwb_ff on Twitter. But yeah, that's where all my content's at.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on. Always a fun time talking to you, interacting with you on the app formerly known as Twitter. You can follow me there at Paul_DFF. I'll be here every week throughout the season. I think I'll be talking to our mutual friend Skylar on this show next week. I have to double
Nice.
check
Yeah.
with him and make sure that that's still on, but should have him on the FF Buffalo. So come back and check that out. We'll wrap up week 3 for you in a nice little bow. Hopefully, no more catastrophic injuries to cover for that one. Fingers crossed. But yeah, this has been the factory tour. If you could subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave a comment, leave a rating. All that stuff is helpful. But just watching the show is good enough for me if that's what you want to do. And I will see you guys next week.